Alrighty, enough of that. Here in the studio with me, currently, is the one and only Robert Menard. How was your trip? How's your trip over?
It's good to be here!
Whoa, a little out for the mic. Try that again.
It's good to be here!
It's going to be like that, is it? Just comedy right from the start.
No, it's very good to be here, man. And I'm honored that you invited me over and picked up the tab for me to get over here and to be part of your last show. I didn't know it was going to be your last show. I'm very honored.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm equally, if not more so, honored to have you here. So I've outdone you, at least.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here. So yeah, should we just dive right into the questions that I've been waiting like 2 years to ask you? Okay.
Yeah,
I guess I'm going to start by asking you and pay attention, folks. Pay attention. Get out your note and paper. What is the difference between a human being and a person?
Imagine a man and he gets married. He's a man and then he becomes a husband.
Okay.
The human being is the man. The person is the husband. Because of the association that exists between him and this other party, there are certain rights and duties which become ascribed to him. It's separate from him, the man, but it's a function of his agreements within his community and to the people in his life. The person, as it's defined as I know it, is the legal thing that exists within which we can ascribe rights and duties. And it changes. I mean, if you're a young kid, imagine you're growing up. Mm-hmm. You're in a house. You're growing up and you've got a nanny. When you're a certain age, you have certain rights and duties, and those might just be to cry when you're hungry and to poop your pants. Mm-hmm. You grow up, and eventually you get to the point where your rights and duties are no longer subject to the will of the nanny because you own the nanny. So the person itself really is just a reflection of your association with some other party which describes the rights and the duties. Mm-hmm. You can't really act as an agent for it. Your person, you can't say I'm acting as an agent for my person and then claim that there's a separation between the two, any more than a man who is married could go outside of the bounds of marriage for a blowjob and then say, but it wasn't the husband getting it, it was just the man. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fly.
Yeah. So from a legal perspective, it's my understanding that it is the goal of the government to attach your file, in this case being the person, or their understanding of you, to who you are as a human being, and make you responsible for the limitations and for the responsibilities that they have assigned your person.
They are the nanny.
Yeah.
And it is in their best interest to ensure that they have a lot of children to take care of. So what I have seen they have done is this created a legal mechanism by which, through our actions, we become subject to their will. Instead of being the master in the relationship with the servant, we have lowered ourselves and become either the servant or a ward of the state. There's actually a legal designation, which I have heard in BC in the courtrooms, mm-hmm. called a child of the province. And you become a child of the province when you allow other people, agents of the province, to administer your affairs on your behalf because you don't know how to do it.
Right. Which makes up about 99% of everybody I know,
if you
it seems lately.
Yeah, it's true, sadly, but I also see it's changing considerably. Mm-hmm. But if you do have a driver's license and you don't know, if you have a driver's license and you never read the Motor Vehicle Act under which you applied for that license,
right.
If you have a social insurance number and you've never read the Human Resources Act or the Income Tax Act of Canada, and you don't know what the obligations you have accepted, what rights you have abandoned, then yeah, you're acting like a child in my book.
Well, so hold on a second. Let's talk about the child left behind. Let's talk about the kid who could make it through grade 8, who isn't even smart enough to know that they have these rights.
Let's talk about Darwin's theories then.
Well, okay.
No, I mean,
No, I mean, like me personally, I've got a grade 10 education. I never graduated high school, right?
My dad has grade 8. He's one of the smartest men I ever know.
Yeah, well, I understand all the legal jargon when I read it, you know, and it just, to me, it seems rather simple. I don't know, I kind of attribute it to playing Magic cards for too long and being all about individual words, but it seems to me that most people I know that do have degrees or have graduated high school have no idea, you know, what their rights and privileges are as a human being, and even more so as a Canadian.
I agree with what you're saying, and to me that's kind of reflective of the fact that our educational system is failing. People in grade 3, in the 3rd grade, they know enough to say, you're not the boss of me. For the most part, a lot of understanding the deception that the people in the government use to secure power. If you just go back to grade 3 and remember what sort of power you had then, enough to question those. I mean, if you're in grade 3 and a stranger comes up to you and says, I want to know your name and I want to see a piece of paper from you, or what's your date of birth, you'd be saying, stranger danger,
yeah.
I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
So now, when we're adults, suddenly, because they're wearing a costume, we feel fear and then we submit.
Not all of us, but...
Okay, fair enough. Not all of us. And that number is growing. We're starting to realize that the excuse, I mean, a cop comes and says, do this, do that, you ask him why, and you get told, because I told you so, or because I said so. You get to a point where that's no longer good enough.
Yeah, so at that point, where an officer of the law is telling you what to do, and you are at any point unsure if they have the authority to do so, what can I do as the average citizen of this country in order to make sure that my rights aren't being abused by an officer of the law?
Well, you can't really do that unless you know what your rights are. If you find yourself in the situation and you haven't prepared for it, there's really, the only thing you can do is bring him the love, express peace to him.
Yeah.
If he asks you to sign anything or do anything, you do it. They have a gun, you don't. They're willing to employ violence and hurt you. You don't want that to happen. So you bring them the love, bring them the peace, and do whatever the hell they want you to do. Sign anything they want you to sign, but do so under protest and duress.
Right.
And get entirely the bleep out of there.
Yeah.
Get away from them, and then within 3 days, rescind whatever you might have signed. Sign it back, write to them and say, I only did this because this guy with a gun was engaging in intimidation and extortion.
But I mean, so
who
do you tell that to? You go to the police to say that, or like?
They generate documents, and these documents go to a third party. You send it to that third party.
It doesn't matter really who the third party is?
No, it doesn't. They're an agent for a principal. You send it to their principal.
Right. So what about the lazy man's route? I mean, I know the average listener
the lazy man's route is put on your chains. There is no lazy man's route to freedom.
Well, can't I just download all of the documents that I need onto a USB thumb drive and keep it on my keychain in case a cop,
That's kind of like listening to all the songs on YouTube and thinking that you can go out and sing.
True enough. True enough. Well said. We'll get back to Robert Menard. I'm stoked. We just came to say hello. Say hello to Robert Menard and Dan Snakehead and passerby Jeff Grant in the studio with me here on Nocturnal Emissions. I was about to say every Thursday, but no, not so much anymore. This is the last Thursday. Those of you who made it to the end of this 2-year session with me, mad props. Go ahead and touch your crotch region and pretend it's me. I give you permission. That being said, Rob wants to chat. Let's chat. What are you thinking, Rob?
No, I thought you were interviewing me.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, straight off the bat, what's your stance on the Occupy movement? I think that's a good one.
Actually, I had a pretty good epiphany watching that. I was in Halifax when the Occupy movement started in Canada. I went down there and checked it out. What I saw was there was a slew of people, and they're all talking about individual problems, and it would seem like some of the problems are completely different from each other. I saw people protesting against fracking, student wages or student debt, and all the way up to old age people talking about their pensions. Hundreds of different problems, but I realize that they all fundamentally face 5 basic problems that if we could address those, all of these symptoms of the problems would go away. Because I think Canada as a nation is suffering a disease, and people are arguing in the Occupy movement about the symptoms without really examining the disease that leads to the symptoms.
So what are the 5 the 5 symptoms in your opinion?
Well, I don't know that I would call them symptoms now, but the 5 things that need to be addressed, I think, is the fact that as a nation, as a people, to a very large degree, I see a bunch of children. When they have a problem with the government, they cry to the government and they petition the government, they protest. They do not make claims. They're not standing as human beings. We allow ourselves to be divided based on the most insane lines. I mean, the color of one's skin, who the hell can decide that? A religion, even that is, although it's a choice, it should be an acceptable choice. We might as well divide ourselves based on the color of our socks. And, and every 4 years we divide ourselves again and further based on a political ideology, which is really just a function of where we are in life, how much money we've got, and how much responsibilities we have. All right, we need people to grow up, because the fundamental thing about growing up is you start accepting responsibility for your actions. This empowers you, and we own this country. We're not accessing and administrating our share of the wealth properly, and when we do that, big changes come. I see the government, when we elect a government every 4 years, we're essentially deciding who is going to hold and administrate our wealth in this country. And I think we've got to get to the point where we say, no, I don't need to elect anyone to do that anymore. We need to administrate this ourselves. That's the first one. People need to grow the hell up.
That's a great point.
The second one is our form of government. It's 800 years of age. They didn't even have the telegraph back then when it was started. I mean, we have internet now. Why the hell are we electing people every 4 years to represent us when we know damn well they don't? We know that they're just whores of the corporations for the most part.
Yeah.
And even the good-hearted ones who get involved, they end up being eaten by this machine.
Yeah, or corrupted.
Yeah, it's a machine which is too easily hijacked by the corporations. It's not doing the job it's meant to do. We have tools available to us now. We should have a direct democracy sort of system where any issue could be raised, deliberated, and determined, and then we decide on it and we incorporate that. I call it the People's Congress. You could do it with the internet. You wouldn't even have to leave your living room, and you would be able to decide on everything from whether or not marijuana should be decriminalized, whether or not we allow fracking, whether or not cops are above the law. Fracking is this insane practice that people are engaging in order to extract natural gas, where they take your groundwater, they inject it, they drill into shale rock, and then into that they grab some groundwater and they inject it full of chemicals, and they essentially fracture the rock down there. And they use high pressure water and chemicals to do it, and then they extract the gas and they sell it to people who aren't even they sell it across the borders essentially, and you end up with a ground that looks pock marked. It's like acne has hit the land. You end up with these things. Look online, man. You'll find these overhead images of places down in Oklahoma, and it gets so bad. This is what's evil about it. I mean, people with really good water end up having stuff come out of their tap that they can light with a butane lighter, and it burns.
Holy crap.
And the people, from what I read, whether or not it's true, I don't have a link or anything because it's like 11 o'clock at night and I don't have my computer. But down in the States, there was this one company, this one guy who owns most of the wells down there. He comes by, he destroys people's water supply, and then he goes through and he sets up water purification plants. So people who have good water have their water supply destroyed, and then they have to buy their water from the same guy who did it.
That's brutal.
So that's fracking. But my point is that with any issue, it could be decided. Our form of government as it is completely archaic. It's rife with corruption, and it's easily hijacked by corporations, and we have the tools to fix that in the form of direct democracy. Our third problem is our courts. Our courts are not operating properly because yeah. The big problem is this. If you want justice, which is what the courts are supposed to give us, you need truth. If you want truth, you can't have fictions. They allow fictions to have a voice in court, whether it's a corporation, whether it's the Crown and the right of the province of imagination, whether it's Regina. Fictions have more say, more power in these courts than we as human beings do. What we need are courts where only people have a voice, and it doesn't matter who you're representing, whatever. You can't point to a fiction. You can't point to Santa Claus and claim that Santa Claus gave you power to steal something from me and give it to someone else so that they will too believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So we need courts where there are no fictions, where only people are heard. Everyone is held responsible for their own actions. Once we have those, we need peace officer force. We saw it in G20. Many of our cops are great human beings. They really are there to serve the community. But there are bad people in that organization who are willing to accept orders without regard for human dignity, and they try to claim, oh, I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
There is no I'm just doing my job.
Well, that's one of the reasons I took up DJing, was so I could say the same thing right back to them.
Yeah. So what I see is a need for a force of peace officers drawn from the community, where everyone who is sane and above 18 years of age essentially gets hired in for $1. They make oath, and they swear to preserve and maintain the public peace and to enforce the criminal code, and that way we bind the cops. And the final thing, the problem I see, is our money supply. The only money in existence has interest attached to it at the moment of creation. Mathematically, you can never win, and the people who are in charge of that, it's like the banker in Monopoly. They can, by controlling the amount of money in circulation and available for exchange.
I've always wondered about this.
They can collapse it up and down until they own all the real wealth and we're all slaves.
Yeah.
Mathematically, you can never pay it all off. So we need a system. We need something in play that allows us to put money in circulation without that interest attached. And if we don't have that, it doesn't matter about the first four, because these guys, these bastards, end up owning everything.
Yeah. Are you aware that Salt Spring Island has its own currency?
I am. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with that, and cool. I love it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's called the LETS, isn't it? Local Electronic Transfer, Local Energy Transfer System, or something like that.
I'm not too learned in it, but it's kind of fun just to be like, yeah, my Salt Spring dollars, here you go. Yeah, well, my boss pays me in them sometimes.
I'd accept them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you imagine a community, what if you had a reality show where you get 100 families, you put them in a valley, and you say you have to live here. They all have different skills, but you don't give them money to engage in exchange and trade. Are they all just going to sit there and starve to death, or are they going to work out some sort of system whereby they can engage in this transaction?
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about Black Rock City for the burn is that there's no money allowed, and there's not a lot of authority. I mean, there's emergency crews and stuff, but everybody thinks that without any authority, they've been so fear-mongered that without any authority or people with badges and guns walking around the streets harassing everybody, that the whole world's just going to collapse and it'll turn into Mad Max